Mr. City Attorney, can you please comment on any reportable actions to the City Council, or I should say by the City Council in closed session?
Yep, thank you, Mayor. We did meet on one item of significant exposure to lit, and there was no reportable action. That is all.
Thank you. Today, normally, I would ask somebody to lead the Pledge of Allegiance, but if you would all indulge me, I'd like to lead us all. It is the highest honor. Please stand. Please cover your right hand. Excuse me, cover your heart with your right hand. Face the flag. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Thank you. At this time, I would ask all those in the audience to please silence your cell phones or turn them off if possible. The Villa Park City Council and staff welcome you to this meeting, and we encourage your participation. If you wish to address the City Council, please complete and submit a speaker card to the City Clerk before the scheduled meeting time. Speaker cards can be found at the entrance to the City Council chambers. Speakers will be limited to a time period of 5 minutes. All right, let's move on to presentations. Do we have a representative from the Sheriff's Department?
No, we don't. I'm not sure. I'm assuming he got called away to something pressing matter.
Understood. Let's move forward with the Orange County Fire Authority. Chief Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. Phil Johnson, Orange County Fire Division 4. Our stats for Villa Park started from October 22nd to today. I am here to report we had 47 incidents within the city since then, and all with one structure fire, and that was back on October 25th. Accidental in nature, electrical, no injuries, and no deaths in that. Additionally, as we know, we are here for we're coming up on the holidays, and Thanksgiving is coming up, and that is our #1 day within Orange County Fire for our cooking fires. We have the most reported cooking fires on that day, followed by Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. Some of us are better cooks than others. We ask that you prevent those fires by keeping an eye on the stove, as well as if a fire does get started on the stove, turn off the oven, cover the pan, do not try to move it, do not try to add water to it because it will make it worse, and please call us. Additionally, something that is that people have been using over the last so many years are the turkey fryers. Two things about the turkey fryers. Nothing wrong with using them, but use them responsibly. Do not ever use them in the house, whereas those could start a fire, as well as the carbon monoxide from the burner. Additionally, keep that outside, and when you are using it, have an extinguisher nearby. A lot of times those things will boil over, especially if your turkey is still semi-frozen, and it will start a fire, and people panic and try to hit it with water, and they end up getting burned. Either case, if you've got the fire in the kitchen on the stove, or if you've got a problem with the turkey fryer, please do not be afraid to call the fire department. We'll be out right away. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none. Villa Park Library, is Ms. Carlos here?
She's detained over in the library, so she won't be able to make a report.
Okay. We'll move on to Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control.
Thank you. At one of the staff presentation, this is information only, no action. The Director of Scientific Technical Services gave an update on vector activity in the county. And they reported 9 cases of typhus in the county in 2019, and 6 cases of dengue have been introduced into the county. There have been 89 cases of West Nile virus in the state this year, with 2 deaths. There have been 2 human cases of West Nile virus this year, and there is a new grid system that's being used for the mosquito surveillance, but to be honest with you, I couldn't find it online, and since I don't actually attend the meetings, because I'm not the representative, I'll have to access that grid some other time. But again, just stressing about making sure there's no standing water, and using repellent, and keeping your arms and legs covered. That's it.
Thank you very much. Orange County Sanitation District.
Okay. I represented the city at the October 23rd and November 20th meetings of the Board of Directors, during which the board approved routine operations and maintenance items. In addition, the board adopted the annual update of the 5-year strategic plan, and the strategic plan includes 14 policy statements and supporting initiatives to implement those policies. On November 6th, I chaired a meeting of the Operations Committee, and the committee's recommendations for maintenance and repair of the collection and treatment systems were approved unanimously by the Board of Directors. Let's see, on October 25th, Councilman Zimmerman and I attended the State of the District presentation at Mouse Square Golf Course, which was well attended, probably about 200 elected officials and others. At which time, the operations of the sanitation district were identified as excellent, good financial condition, and we're meeting our environmental objectives in terms of water quality protection. On November 8th, I attended the groundbreaking event for the final expansion of the groundwater recycling system. And this event, which was held at the Orange County Water District headquarters in Fountain Valley, was attended by more than 250 elected officials and water professionals. The final expansion of the system is the third and final phase of the project, and when completed, the system will produce 130 million gallons of per day of high-quality water. The produced water helps to protect the groundwater basin from seawater intrusion and increases our drinking water supplies. The groundwater recycling system has been hailed as a global model for local water reliability, inspiring scores of similar projects throughout California. And that's my report.
I can add a little bit to that. That's
Okay.
all right.
Please.
So the state of the district, I know sanitation is one of those things we all kind of take for granted sometimes. And so hearing their annual review of what they've done this past year, and for them to talk, they actually showed a history of what Orange County sanitation has looked like. And you can really see very clearly, just in the last 7 or 10 years, the plans that have been put into place just in Orange County are really advanced. They are some of the most forward-thinking plans that are done in the country. As Bob mentions about the water reclamation that we're doing here, it's fantastic. And I know a lot of people don't think about it, but when you think about it for just a second, what we're doing here matters a great deal in terms of our environment and how we're using and reusing our resources. So knowing that we have some very competent and forward-thinking people in this Orange County Sanitation District is very refreshing and encouraging to see. So that's my report.
Thank you. Orange County Fire Authority. That's going to be my report. On November 21st, I attended the executive, regular, and closed session meetings of the Orange County Fire Authority. The executive session in particular dealt with the approval of the consent calendar, which consisted of monthly investment reports, first quarter financial newsletter, extension of a sole source contract for medical supplies, contract amendment to for a cooperative contract for information technology staffing, and a contract award for archaeological and environmental services, as well as the 2019 legislative report. The consent calendar was approved unanimously. The regular session dealt with reports from the chief, as well as the chairs of the Budget and Finance and Human Resources Committee, the consent calendar, and approval of a budget adjustment in which an additional $1 million would be expended towards the capital improvement and infrastructure maintenance for fire stations and other facilities associated with the fire authority. And then lastly, the approval of the CAFR, the yearly audit. The closed session dealt with contract talks involving Local 3631, the Firefighters Association, and the Chief Officers Association. And that ends my report. Next, we have Orange County Library Advisory Board.
So the Orange County Library Advisory Board met on October 24th. I wasn't able to attend, and I do have a bunch of notes from it. What I'd like to do is defer and talk about that next month when we discuss it.
So noted. City Schools Advisory.
So the City Schools Advisory Board didn't have a specific meeting. I do want to talk about the OUSD master plan, but I guess I'll probably leave that to the end to talk about.
Very well. Community development.
The Community Development Committee met on November 4th and recommended consideration of the balanced energy resolution that will be considered by council in our meeting tonight.
Thank you. Friends of Villa Park Library.
Friends of the Villa Park Library met on November 7th. There was some discussion about how the library here in Villa Park is part of the Orange County Library Association, and that we do a lot of work within our own library specifically for our residents here, but also as part of a larger system. We'll bring in books locally that impact everybody in the county, and then we're also able to draw from libraries all over the county. And it's amazing that our small little library is part of something big, but also the Friends of the Library in particular does a lot to contribute to this library. So if anybody has the opportunity to support them, I'd encourage that.
Next, Infrastructure Management Advisory.
This is an advisory committee that consists of resident public works professionals. And at this meeting, the committee discussed the 2019-20 street maintenance projects and placement of dog waste receptacles, which are needed to help us meet our NPDES stormwater compliance requirements. That's ends my report.
Investment Advisory.
So we met, excuse me, on the 13th of this month. Still looking for someone who would be interested in joining the group. Would be best if that person had a financial background and smart and vocal. And then we spent some time kind of introducing ourselves because we have our new finance director, Jim. So we kind of went around the table and did our who's who. And then we basically discussed about that VP is a financially safe city, which is something we should be really proud of. We have really no debt beyond the pension obligations. We talked about we're at a very good risk assessment externally. And then there was discussion about the PARS investment and what portfolio we are in. And we're actually in a very moderate risk account. And the IAC Investment Advisory Committee will be presenting all 5 different portfolios options in the early spring.
Thank you. Law Enforcement Advisory. On November 4th, I attended the Law Enforcement Advisory on behalf of the council. The committee met and discussed the homeless litigation, which at this time is still a fairly fluid situation. All North SPA or service provider area cities, which Villa Park is a part of, are trying to work together to comply with settlement agreements and the federal court system and the Orange County Sheriff's Department. There's a pending case before, I believe, the Supreme Court, correct me if I'm wrong, called the Boise case, which may have major impacts on this. And at this point in time, I think there's a lot of folks standing by to wait and see what the results of that are. Todd, Steve, if you have anything to add on that, feel free, but I think that's more or less where we're kind of in limbo, so to speak.
Yes. Just FYI for public, the Boise case basically held that a city could not enforce its anti-camping ordinances against somebody who was living on the street unless there was a shelter bed that they could put the person in and the person refused. So it set up this constitutional right to be homeless if there was a bed available. So, and that's under review by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Thank you. Then we had the crime report, which I will defer to the sheriff on that. In essence, there were 39 citations and very, very few crimes. I believe there were 2, but if the sheriff shows up, then we'll get that report from him or her, whoever the representative is. Neighborhood Watch added 3 new members. The professional service responder had no group had no update. And the Villa Park Emergency Preparedness Training Program is looking for future dates and is going to request that the Orange County Fire Authority and Sheriff's Department collaborate. I think we'll get together and talk maybe after Thanksgiving about some possible dates in 2020 to get some of our residents trained up and hopefully get a few more folks trained in first aid, CPR, and basic emergency preparedness. That ends my report. Actually, one other item. The committee also expressed concerns over a fatal injury traffic collision that took place technically in the city of Orange, but right on the periphery of our city at Collins Avenue and Roberto Street. There were no formal recommendations made, just concerns uttered by committee members and echoed by residents throughout the community. As we know, that's a relatively dangerous stretch of roadway, and hopefully the city of Orange will be able to work collaboratively with its neighbors and residents and see if there's some way that we can calm traffic or slow folks down. That's basically about it. That ends my report. Next, we have Villa Park Community Services Foundation.
The Community Services Foundation met on October 23rd. We're excited about the Santa Tour coming up on December the 7th, and also the Villa Park Boat Parade on December 15th. I noticed that our chairperson is in the audience tonight, and I think I'd like to defer any additional updates to that kind gentleman, if you want to come up and.
Mr. Carter, please come forward.
Looks like you covered most of the things that are going to be happening here, but one thing you didn't mention is we have the Marine Thanksgiving that's coming up on Thursday morning. Normally we meet out here in front of City Hall. We're probably going to end up moving that over to what was formerly called the Cafeteria at Villa Park High School. And hopefully we'll get a little break in the weather. We don't have to do that. Then, of course, we have the Winter Wonderland that's coming up, thanks to Councilman Miles putting that together. So we're going to have that right after the Santa Tour, and we'll have that right outside City Hall here. And, of course, you probably all know why I'm here beyond that. Should I go into that now?
Sir.
Okay.
Please.
Well, very good. We'll do that. So it's ho, 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 ho. Santa Claus is coming to town. And the reason that I am here this evening is to talk about the 2019 Dryland Boat Parade. Within the theme of Jingle Bell Rock, the 22nd annual Villa Park Dryland Boat Parade will roll along in our city streets on Sunday, December 15th, beginning at 5 p.m. in front of Villa Park High School. Everyone is encouraged to participate, whether it is getting your crew to decorate a unique craft to enter the award competition or plan a neighborhood party to jingle some bells at the entourage of vessels. This wacky Villa Park Community Services Foundation event is sponsored by Southern California Edison this year. Registration forms, maps, and more info is available on the foundation and city websites. Vendor opportunities for the after-party awards celebration in the town center are noted there, too, as well, and do stay for a sip or a bite after the parade is over. One of the pleasures of the foundation board each year has been to scout, underline that word, Villa Park like an eagle, underline that word, for a grand marshal for the parade. They always want the honoree to have good chemistry with the community, an individual, couple, or close-knit family that cares and shares their thoughtfulness and abilities with others often tops the list. Many are known for their volunteer contributions through organizations like the Villa Park Women's League, Villa Park Rotary, Indian Princess, Girl Scouts, Assistance League, and I'll of course add the Dad's Club, and maybe even the foundation itself. Or perhaps being a member of the Villa Park City Council or the Serrano Water Board, past or present. As always, a doggone tough decision, as our hidden jewel has many of these dedicated folks. Yes, it has been finally decided. But then, there was a dilemma with the later date of this event this year about getting the word out and about who had been selected to lead our parade. To meet its publishing deadline, the foundation did have to share some info with the local Foothills Century newspaper prior to the council meeting. Fortunately, our local writer promised to do her best to keep it a secret, but we all know it would be difficult as she isn't a PEO like her mother-in-law. Well, if you haven't figured out who this is by now, please join us and let us all hear some jingle bells and welcome Andy and Greg Mills and also their daughter Abby. So I just like to personally say I'm very pleased to introduce Greg and particularly Andy. Greg introduced me to volunteerism, if you will, many years ago when I asked him why he was cleaning a barbecue, and he said, because I'm in the Dad's Club. And from there, it's history from there. So 20 years ago, I started volunteering for things. Wasn't for Greg, I wouldn't be in Rotary and many other the rich things here that we have in Villa Park. So it's my pleasure to have him and his family be on board this year.
Be on board.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Andy?
It's a great honor. We're thrilled.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'm shocked.
I kept it secret.
Have fun.
Thank you and congrats.
Thank you. That's it.
Bridge, is that Kramer?
Sorry, I was off thinking about the boat parade. There's no meeting this month because we met in September, which I reported on in October, and the next meeting will be December 18th. December 18th.
Thank you. Unless there's anything else, that ends our presentations and reports. Time for public comments, but beforehand, at this time, members of the public may address the council on any off-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the council, provided that no action may be taken on off-agenda items unless authorized by law. Opportunities will be also provided for public comment on each agenda item. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person and 30 minutes for all comments. Do we have any speaker cards?
Not this time, no, sir.
Okay. All right, next we'll move on to public hearings. Agenda item 2. Now we will move into our agendized public hearings, the first of which is waive the reading in full of all ordinances and resolutions on the agenda. Steve?
This is the monthly motion we make to waive the reading, like you said, to move in an expeditious manner on our meetings, so we'd recommend approval.
Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Passes by a 5-0 vote.
Item 3 is adoption of the 2019 Building Standards Codes. Steve?
This is the second public hearing. The last was held in October. This is the adoption of the building codes that we're required to do every 2 years. With that, there have been no changes since the October meeting. We've received no input from the public, no comments from any parties at this time, so we would recommend approval after you conduct the public hearing.
Okay. Just for the record, our final hearing is the second reading of ordinance number 2019-617, the adoption of the 2019 Building Standards Codes. Do we have any questions from the council? Do we have any public comment? Any discussion? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Please cast your vote.
That passes by a 5-0 vote.
Next up, we have the consent calendar, items 4 through 8. Now we will consider our consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered routine and are usually enacted by one motion approving the recommended action listed on the agenda. Any member of the city council, staff, or the public may request an item be removed from the consent calendar for discussion or separate action. Council members, are there any items, numbers 4 through, it says 7 here, but it's actually 8. Would you like to remove any of these items from the consent calendar?
Yes.
Okay, which item?
8 and 10.
8.
And 10.
Ten's a
That's a new business.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8.
So we'll just, we'll pull 8 per Mayor Pro Tem Pitts' request. Do we have any members of the public that would like to pull any agenda items on the consent calendar? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the balance, items 4 through 7?
So moved.
Motion.
Second.
Okay, motion by Councilwoman Miles and a second by either Monsieur Pitts or Colacott. Go ahead and vote.
That passes by a 5-0 vote.
Okay, let's return to item 8. Sir?
Steve, I had a question in here. with regards to the resolution, because I was questioning how the protection of customers from higher energy costs and how we do that through this resolution or through these rules changes.
Okay, item number 10, I'm sorry, 8, I'm thinking number 10. Number 8 is the question about is there protections or,
Yeah, because it says, by supporting the attached resolution, the city council is voicing support for the protection of customer choice, which I absolutely agree. But it also says protection of customers from higher energy costs. How do we do that as a city?
I think what the thing is that the voice of the city expressing a concern for local choice would allow the city to weigh in on fact if electrification may cost more or going to one utility would cost more, that freedom of choice would allow us to make that decision. So it allows us the protection, I believe. We have a representative from the gas company here who can also speak to that in more detail. If you want
Would you
to.
please step forward? Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council members. Emily Grant with SoCal Gas Public Affairs. So to answer that question, that's about right what the city manager stated. Considering the public safety power shutoffs, the hardening for utility infrastructure due to wildfires, all of those things that are all great things that are going to keep us really safe, they're certainly going to come at a cost. And we don't know what that cost is going to be to the ratepayer. So by having a diverse energy portfolio, we can ensure that we're keeping costs down. Again, we just don't know what the cost is going to be to the ratepayer as they
I was
update
just
their system.
cautioning about saying that we're protecting them from higher costs and how we word the resolution. I understand there's, potentials for, at or lower cost potentially, but when we say that we're protecting them, the city is protecting the customers from higher energy costs, we just have to be careful with that. That's not a guarantee we can make. So I just brought that up, that's all.
That's a good point. I would also like to point out that we received correspondence, which I've shared with you, from Mr. James Peterson from the Edison, and Mr. Peterson has asked that the item be continued. He believes that to allow Southern California Edison to have the opportunity to meet with the council, to have a conversation about energy policy and energy choice. I've shared that with you. Staff's recommendation at this time, because there is no specific recommendation for any utility company, and it's not prohibiting meeting with anybody in the future, that we would go ahead at this time and adopt the resolution, would be my recommendation. However, for the record, we did receive that correspondence. Excuse me.
It's my understanding, if I may speak on this a little bit, this is just basically signifying the city's interest to give our residents choice and as many opportunities in utilities as possible. Correct me if I'm wrong, and that there's been somewhat of a effort on behalf of certain industries or utilities to try to become a sole provider or
Yeah, if I can,
Please.
it really is pushing back on the state and sending the state a message. So it's in the state arena. We saw in 2018 a lot of bills that were going through the legislature that I like
a lot
to
of
say,
lobbying efforts.
yeah, just kind of dipping a toe in the electrification pool to see if it had any sea legs there, and it didn't. So ultimately, what they did was they watered down these electrification bills to not be any sort of mandate, but be study bills. So that kicks it over to the regulatory side of the arena. Unfortunately, what the Public Utilities Commission and the California Energy Commission are both coming up with are all 100% electrification-based solutions.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any questions or comments from the council?
Just one other thing, Steve, the resolution itself needs a correction, I believe.
Okay.
On the first,
Yeah,
Huh?
go ahead. Yeah,
on the first page, it references Yorba Linda.
it's a typo.
It's like 1, 2, 3, 4,
4, 5, 6,
Six
6
paragraphs, yeah.
paragraphs.
Okay.
But again, I just want to caution, me personally, I want to caution about guarantee. We can't guarantee.
That's correct.
We can help prevent, but we can't guarantee. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
I attended a meeting of the American Council of Cities, Orange County chapter, or Association of California Cities, Orange County chapter, a couple of months back, and there was a representative from Southern California Edison that was touting the benefits of electricity and pointing out how they were seeking, the electrical industry was seeking surcharges on particularly gas for the to subsidize some of their infrastructure or capital projects, and which would clearly take it out of our choice and put a surcharge on those of us that might choose gas instead. So I invited the representative from Southern California Gas to come and make a presentation to the Community Development Committee, and we forwarded that this resolution as a recommendation for consideration by our council. And basically, what it is let's play fair here. Don't make our residents pay through their gas bills for subsidizing the electrical industry. Let's let them fight on the even footing here. In doing so, I think it'll keep our prices cheaper.
Thank you. Anything else from the council?
I just would I hope you'll come back if we do end up having to, really make decisions on the choice, or if, Southern California Edison comes in, I hope you'll come back. And because I know when you came to us for the CDC, you gave a scenario. I won't repeat it because it's far off, but that scenario is one that I don't think anyone would want to have to contemplate. So
Absolutely, we appreciate that. I see this just as relevant the same way we update you on our advanced meter programs or our pipeline safety programs. This is something that's happening that will impact the city. It will impact your residents, and we're going to be here for you every step of the way to keep you informed and let you know what's going on.
Thank you. Anybody in the audience have questions? Staff members? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve item 8 then?
So moved.
With the corrections?
I would say with the correction.
Thank you. Okay, I have a motion and a second. With the corrections noted, please cast your vote.
Passes by a 5-0 vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Now on to new business. Item 9, the award of the engineering, our first item, I should say, of the new business is the approval of the engineering design contract for fiscal year 2019-2020 annual street rehabilitation project. Steve?
Yes, this is, as you're aware, in the budget, you approved moving forward on the next street rehab project. We've identified streets. You guys have approved them. We amended those based on your direction with one of the streets. We have gone out to bid, came back. We had 3 responsive bidders, all very well qualified. One of the issues we had was we were trying to get Serrano done as one of the streets, so we'd like to have the design work as done it because of the proximity and where it's being done. And we believe that it's probably cost efficient to do it now, so we'd like to do the design work so we can have that done. So of the 3 respective bids, the low bid would be NV5 Incorporated. That firm would come in at $55,000. We had $50,000 budgeted. However, we believe that additional costs, Serrano, we should incorporate that. It's well worth our money to spend the $5,000 and get the design, and at least we can put it out to bid and see what we can accomplish. So we would recommend, again, all 3 firms were excellent firms. All 3 submitted very high quality bids and very close, very comparable price-wise. So with that, we'd recommend NV5 and awarding the contract and allowing the mayor to sign that contract so we can move forward. The contract, the way it would work is that design work will start next week with the award of this contract, and the work will be done starting in the spring, much like we did last year, and we move forward. So with that, I'd answer any questions.
Thank you. Sir?
I may have a conflict on this one, so I will not be voting on this item.
I might also, but I don't, when you say all of this, when you say Serrano, is it all of Serrano or?
It would
It
be
has
from
different
Nichols to
segments.
Santiago.
Nichols to Santiago, okay.
That stretch, basically
No,
by
not me.
the middle school over to Santiago.
So far west of me, not.
Well,
No, I
If you went Nichols to the other direction to center, that would be me.
That would be
But
you.
Nichols to Santiago, I'm not
It's not
interested.
him.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Good. Want to make sure you're good.
Yeah.
That's all.
I have a question.
So if the councilman, I apologize, has a conflict, you should probably leave the dais, enter the code.
Has NV5 done other contracts in the city?
yes, they have. They did design work on our last year's contract for that, and we were pleased with them. NV5, so for the record, actually provides us engineering services, so they were not involved in the evaluation process, nor was the engineer. So we kept it, and we keep the billing comes through me as opposed to the city engineer. So we keep a separation. We don't have a large enough city to divide staff, it's a very limited while we can do it, but we have separated, and they've been doing excellent work for us in the past. But again, all three firms are excellent firms, so there's no question that any of the three could do it, so we went with the cost, candidly, what it breaks down to.
Any further questions or comments from the council?
Can I, actually, let me just clarify, just to make sure, but just legally. I mean, how close do I need to be to a street project in order for to be considered influenced or
Is it 1,000 feet
decision.
or is it?
It's generally 500.
feet?
Yes.
Yeah. Well done.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Can we vote with 3 people?
Yes.
You can,
Yep,
as long as
quorum
you
of
have a
3.
quorum. We have a quorum.
No less than 3, so if anyone else goes, we're done.
Well, no, I'm just kidding.
And
Don't you dare.
because it's an award of a contract, the vote would have to be unanimous to pass.
And the NV5 award,
Yes.
are there conflicts other than just distance to somebody's home?
For a street paving contract, well, for an engineering contract of this nature, there wouldn't be, unless somebody
Employment.
owns or
Employment?
works for them.
Employment. Yeah, I think that's one of the concerns. Consulting employment.
Okay.
Otherwise, no. Okay, so sounds like we're good on the council here. Members of the audience, do you have any questions about this? Any comments? Okay. Any further discussion amongst us? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I move.
Do I
to
have a
approve.
second? You was making me sit here, aren't you? Okay, I'll second it. All right. Please cast your vote.
That passes, that does not pass.
It does not pass.
Okay.
So would we get an alternate proposal? Would you like?
Suggest you do.
We have the bids, so the bids are time certain, so would you like us to come forward now?
Or take the next bid,
Okay, well, so
or whatever you recommend.
this is a professional services agreement, so it doesn't necessarily have to be the lowest price like a public works contract would, but there usually has to be some grounds to do so. If anybody would like to discuss that, or you could reject all bids and send it out to be rebid.
Are we
You-
allowed- No, why, are we allowed to ask why,
Sure.
why,
I'm concerned there's a conflict of interest
with who?
with Bob and the awarding firm.
But
We don't want
he
that.
stepped down, though.
I understand that, but he's still under the employment. So, just, I don't want anyone in the city to have perceived notions about it or anything else on his behalf, certainly.
But okay, well, I could see that, but you don't think him removing himself is enough of a separation? All right.
Not if he's employed. That's like me trying to get the AV contract for this office. I stepped away from that completely. I gave him the design, but I'm not involved in the bidding or anything.
I think Bob's involved in the bidding, is he?
Don't know. Haven't gotten any input. There's a conflict of interest under employment there, so.
Well, it has to be unanimous, so let's move forward. We can all,
I can recommend, the second firm would be Adam Streeter, Civil Engineers.
what's the difference in the costs, please?
And you're gonna ask that, I have it, if you can give me 2 minutes to
Sure.
go grab it off my
Let's
desk.
go ahead and take a 5-minute, we're gonna take a 5-minute recess.
Like that. Is that the,
I'll have to verify. I don't
We're
wanna
gonna
speak
take a
out.
5-minute recess, give you the time, and feel free to mill about, get a drink of water, use the restroom. We'll be back and move forward on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, understand. Let's reconvene.
Okay, so the way it played out was like I said, the final determining factor, because they're all very highly qualified terms. NV5 was the lowest at 55,000. The second lowest bid is CNC Engineering at 56.9, about 57,000. 57.6 was Adams Streeter. The difficulty with CNC is that they did not provide a bid for Serrano. So they did not give us an alternate bid. So that would be significantly higher potentially after. So that's why my secondary recommendation, as the council's chosen not to go with NV5, if you were looking strictly at cost, which I think is the primary differential at this point, would be Adams Streeter Civil Engineering, our cost differential of about $2,600 from NV5. It's a firm based in Irvine, highly qualified, all very experienced workers. They have not done work for the city, but they have done work for other local jurisdictions throughout Orange County on these types of projects. So we'd be very comfortable with Adams Streeter as a second-rated firm. And I'm prepared to move that recommendation for you.
Are they able to start the same time?
Yes, yes. All three are capable and submitted responsive bids.
Given that recommendation, I'm going to open that up for council discussion again and then the public. Any questions, comments, concerns about that? Nope. Okay, seeing none. Moving on to the audience. Do we have any concerns publicly about that? Okay, I'll bring it back to the council. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we support, is it Adams Streeter?
Adams Streeter.
Streeter, thank you.
Civil Engineering.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
Passes by a 3-0 vote.
Item 10.
Shall we go ahead and get the other?
Yes, please.
Oh, I got it. Sorry. That's okay. Oh.
Yeah, we got this on our dais. Saw this
I won't break anything.
letter. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
The break.
All right. Back to new business. Item 10. Our next item of new business is regarding accessory dwelling unit mandates, courtesy of the state of California.
Yes, this has come forward. We, last council meeting, we had an update regarding ADU or accessory dwelling unit, and the council asked us to get some information together. So what we've done, worked very quickly to try and get a matrix of where our current ordinances are and then what the new laws provide. So you'll see attached there, the council wanted to have some information to be able to share it and start disseminating that into the public. This is a draft because some of this is still under interpretation and still being finalized, and you know, there's some review processes going on. However, I would also indicate that we received some correspondence, which I've shared with you, from Californians for home ownership. I'm not sure what that group is associated with or whatever, but basically they wanted to be participating in the developing of our ordinances. For clarification, our intent would be to bring the ordinances in line with state law. It's not a subjective, but an objective process that we try and move forward with in developing our ordinances. As you can see, there's a lot of work to be done. These ordinances will come forward. Whether our ordinances are updated or not, the timing, we want to move forward in doing it, but state law goes into effect January 1st. So it doesn't, they supersede our ordinances immediately upon taking effect. So we are dependent upon state law or the interpretation thereof starting January 1st.
That's correct.
So what you see here in the required changes of things we're having to do, those are the law provisions we're going to have to do. We're going to have to live with. And there are some significant issues for us regarding side setbacks, the allowance of multiple ADUs on sites, senior and primary and secondary, no residency requirements. We cannot charge for reviews of anything under 800 square feet. There's a lot of, you don't have to require additional parking. You could basically convert garages if you wanted to. You could convert garages into ADUs. So this is probably the best summary we have at this point. We want to make that available so you guys, as a council, would be able to start sharing some of that information. I think the Mayor Pro Tem Pitts was interested in being able to sort of articulate that to the residents, because when they see the magnitude of the types of changes. There are significant changes to the extent, we've talked, there could be potentially the size of Villa Park could be doubled or tripled as a result of this. Number of residents, not the number of parcels, the number of residents. There are still some really interesting questions, I'll be really candid, that we're trying to grapple with, that if somebody were to sell part or all of these, what's the, how do these get treated as a single piece of property, or can they sell ADUs, or all those kinds of things? So there's some new questions that are coming up. So it's sort of being a challenge, and it's a work in progress. So I suspect early part of next year, we'll come back with our ordinances. We'll work with the city attorney, but it's going to be a lot of work ahead of us. But I think this is what you were asking for, is to try and get you some additional information upfront that you could share in as basic, comprehensive form, but it's massive. The changes are massive.
Understood.
Yeah, this particular change could completely rework and permanently alter in a very detrimental way the fabric of Villa Park. Our housing stock, our streets, our sewers, our infrastructure, our schools. This is no small thing that the state has basically done and forced down our throat. And I want to thank the Mayor Pro Tem, because I think that staff has done an excellent job in creating this matrix. And I know it's a receive and file item, but I think we need to have a healthy discussion about this and cast a spotlight on how unfortunate and how inappropriate this type of legislation and its effects upon a small city such as our own. It's going to potentially massively change the way that our city was made. It's going to change the way that it is. It was made up with a certain idea in mind, and this is not at all what we bought into when we invested in Villa Park. It's going to change property values for the negative, and I'm very, very concerned. So I hope that we all raise the flag and let our elected representatives know that this is unsatisfactory, and it starts at the governor's office. This is a complete failure of leadership.
I would like to point out that having talked to other cities all around Orange County, that's one of the things I started doing real quickly, and our planners have done that, well. One of the things that does remain intact is our ratios of what can be built on property. So you can't, is it 40%? The restrictions on how large?
Lot coverage, yeah.
So that stays in effect. So there is some limitation, although that's very limited in control. Now, the other interesting thing is, well, I thought all cities would be united against this. It's typically the only cities that are really worried about it are cities that have large lots. If they
Exactly.
don't have large lots, it's a non-issue, because
that's what
their ratio is a lot ratio, they can't do it.
Right.
So
And
it
that's-
really becomes an issue for a city like us, some of the cities that have large lots as a thing. So it's kind of an interesting education that is going on, and people there's not united opposition to some of this.
Right.
It's just not. So some of the cities don't really have any concerns or cares about it, and it's surprising, but they're not worried about it. So it's kind of an interesting play here, and it's not affecting everybody universally, but a city like Villa Park, it could significantly change the complexion of the city.
Indeed. I'd like to open up for other comments.
Question. Are you looking for direction beyond just this tonight, in terms of what some of the next steps would be from us? Or are you coming back with a plan, or because I appreciate this, but there's still a lot, as you said, there's still a lot more work to do. Is our consultant, is he also going to be involved in helping us redraft the ordinance? I don't want me personally, I don't want external parties helping to redraft our.
No, sir. This will all be done internally by our staff. And candidly, the plan at this point is to implement state law. I've received no direction otherwise, but that would be the plan of action. The development of the ordinances is a very straightforward process once we get clear interpretation of the law, state laws, I think. But it's going through our ordinances and making sure that we've comprehensively addressed all of those cross-references, if you will. So the plan of action, like I say, it's going to be early 2020 before we get back to you with that plan, but it is all going to be done. We're not going to bounce it off of other entities. Our goal is to work as we would with our city attorney and any, and dealing with our planners with regards to that. So our plan is to come back with ordinances that comply with state law, unless I hear otherwise.
And some outline of what our lost revenue will look like also, potentially?
Potentially, we could try and come up with a number, a back of the envelope number,
Just
because.
something for
Yeah, we
planning
can try and
sake
do that, yes,
for
sir.
our budget and things like that next year.
And
Yeah.
the extra burden, I'm concerned about the extra burden that this is going to put on staff, and potentially folks trying to capitalize on this in a very self-interested and economic manner, not in a manner that they're trying to be part of the community, that they're only solely interested in investing in the community for a flip kind of situation. Build it out, build it out, build it out as much as you can, all the way up to that 40% number, using all the little loopholes and terms of this particular bill. And I'm very interested to know what we can do about that and recouping those costs, because I think those costs are going to be significant to staff and to our community as a whole.
We have the potential of filing a state mandate, a claim for state mandates. However, those are, it's a very cumbersome process, and the return is very limited because the state is only required to reimburse what they have available to give. In other words, what they have as excess dedicated for that purpose. So the SB 90 process is something we can go, so we will track all those expenses and make a claim to the state, but the reality is it's going to be percentages on the dollar that we could ever get back, if at all. And that could take us some time because it has to go to the Commission on State Mandates to determine that that's a viable expense, et cetera. So there'll be a lot of, that would be probably multiple years out before we receive anything. But that's a good point. We will track and make sure that we submit an SB 90 claim.
Thank you.
The other thing I'd like to see us do too is also come up with recommendations in terms of how we might look at, interpret the law and how we might manage the law to help our homeowners here in Villa Park, and not to break the law or anything like that. I'm not saying that, but I like to be creative about things and look for ways that we can, do things in each one of these categories that can help, fix some of the problems.
We'll try and look at things as creatively as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just gonna add, it just seems like there's gotta be, I don't know if you wanna call it a loophole or maybe some tweaking of, I find it really hard to believe that this is it. This is the hand we're dealt, and we can't come up with some sort of creative way to either incentivize residents not to do what you were suggesting, and or carefully reword some of our ordinances. I don't know.
The careful, they were pretty thorough in how they did this.
Very thorough.
Yes.
It is flat out verbatim that all local ordinances are superseded by this new law. That's almost a quote.
It's a complete,
It is, so the idea of incentivizing and those things, there's financial disincentives actually, because it says we can't charge certain things now. So
Correct.
they've taken away a lot of the standard creative approaches. So I think the Mayor Pro Tem has hit on, we're going to have to try and think outside the box, but that's going to be a challenge. And I think we're talking to some other cities, and I thought there'd be a lot of unison, but there's not. There's only a certain number of cities that are even concerned about this, really, quite candidly. So it'll be a challenge for us, and we can look at it, but they were pretty thorough, and you got to have to keep in mind that the governor is a strong supporter of this approach, and he's indicated a strong desire to ensure that the law is followed with respect to the new laws.
So, dumb question. So let's pretend it's January 2nd, 2020, and someone's gonna do both an ADU and a junior ADU, do they still have to come and, you know, come to the city? And then do public notices still have to get sent out and the neighbors notified? So then when we had a city council meeting, would we still have to vote, I guess? And we'd be able to say, oh, sorry, you have too much opposition?
No.
No.
No. You could still require public noticing. That's not an issue. But it would only be peer pressure that they decide not to do it. You cannot do any legal, there is no way the city council can stop the development of these projects.
Maybe peer pressure's the way we go.
Well, that's part of what I brought up earlier last month, and I want to reiterate this month. We have to develop a communications plan to the folks here in Villa Park and get everyone behind us in terms of whatever actions we're going to take. But the more they know and understand, the better off I think we'll all be. But I guarantee you one thing, come November 2020, you take care of it in the ballot box. That's the
Exactly.
best way to do it.
Yeah.
Have we reached out to some of our similar cities?
Yeah.
Palos Verdes, Rancho Palos Verdes, you name it, some that have the larger lots, and tried to create any sort of consortium, any sort of network in a joint effort to try to fight this in every possible manner?
Yeah,
Because
and
this really runs the risk of destroying the fabric of our community.
yes, we have reached out to some of the League of Cities, and we've reached out to some of the cities that are similar to us. There's kind of a lot going on because you have the RENA issue as well that sort of changes the complexion of this discussion for some cities. In other words, some cities are hoping to use ADUs as their way to meet their RENA credits requirements.
Can you describe what the RENA credits
I'm
are
sorry,
for
is
the?
Regional Housing Needs Assessment, which is what the state requirement for affordability in housing, that the housing stock is built. So we talked about that at our last city council meeting where John, our consultant, John Douglas came down. That requires you to develop a certain amount of affordable homes within your city. There are new numbers coming down. The number for Villa Park, it's almost unconscionable. It's several hundred, let me just say. And we only have 2,000 units in parcels in the city. So for us to have several hundred units is sort of difficult to even fathom. But that's sort of, there's a lot of dynamics going on with these conversations. So every city is sort of evaluating, and they're doing exactly what we are now, figuring out what the law is, how does it affect them, which is the steps we're trying to do. Then, you know, how does it play out with everything else that's going on at the same time? So it is sort of the dynamic of everybody figuring out that we're all on the same page or on the same team hasn't gotten to that point yet, but we have reached out and have at least started those conversations. So there's a lot of I mean, they just had a discussion and both Ray and Bill attended a forum the other day with ADUs, and I think it was over in Orange, and they had all the planners from around the county and other cities that were open as well. And I think there was a universal agreement that frustration, I guess, a universal frustration at the end of the day. But I don't know that they're all agreed that how it's going to affect them. They all say, well, it's going to affect us this way, it's going to affect us that way, or some are saying, well, maybe this is our answer. Maybe we can get state housing to accept ADUs as our RENA number, you know, toward our RENA numbers, et cetera. So there's a lot of discussions and issues that still that will play out. And I think the starting is, like Mayor Pro Tem said, is to get the education out first and start having these discussions so that people start realizing the magnitude of what we're talking about here.
Todd?
Mayor, one quick question. I think Councilwoman Miles brought it up last time. There is actually language in the law that says ADUs, HCD may consider for certain RENA allocation numbers. So you had brought that point up last time, so I checked on that, and it's actually in there.
But the issue there is
Nobody can afford
ADUs in Orange, or ADUs in Villa Park will not count as affordable because of the
Exactly.
nature of the rent that would be charged, et cetera. So, you know.
It doesn't help us, and it doesn't help
It doesn't necessarily
similar
help us
cities.
unless you were to designate them as affordable or, you know, they would have to be,
You can segregate them.
you could segregate them, but
can
you would still
segregate
have to do that by deed or by was something along those lines. And, you know, it gets sort of complicated, and are people going to want to do that? Guarantee that,
Do you permanently encumber the deed, the title with that? And
that,
That's the typical way to do it.
which
which
that
would
has a
be,
deleterious
it would
effect
affect your property values
in a
right down
massive
the
way.
road. So if you
and
were to
those
sell,
around you.
you've got to sell it as that. You can't, somebody can't come in and change the, you know. So there's a lot of play still to happen here. We do not have a sympathetic governor on this issue.
Yeah, as was noted, the purpose of this, of the ADUs and the allocation of affordable, the requirements to develop affordable housing units is a mandate that's been adopted by both houses of the legislature and signed by the governor. So we really don't have a choice. And as the city manager pointed out, we've got an allocation of several hundred at this point, additional dwelling units that we have to provide, not houses necessarily, but dwelling units. And potentially, accessory dwelling units could be considered a dwelling unit for the purposes of meeting these low-income housing requirements. But we first faced this in 2016 when we had to adopt the first accessory dwelling unit ordinance, and that effectively doubled the potential density of our city, which was significant in and of itself. But this requirement potentially triples the original density of our city, and the whole thing that's unique about Villa Park and the reason we moved here is because we're a very low density city. Being low density, you don't see a lot of cars out on the street. You don't see a lot of activity going around because it's a fairly low density. Again, this what this new requirement could lead to is a virtual tripling of our density. I think there's even a requirement that you can convert your garage without replacement.
Right.
So even for our smaller lots and those other sister cities with smaller lots, they could see some significant impacts too. You, as residents convert their garages to small accessory dwelling units, don't have to provide replacement parking, and you end up with more parking out on the streets there. This is a mess. One of the questions I had on Section 23-22 minimum standards, item B, it says the required changes is one accessory dwelling unit plus one junior accessory dwelling unit per lot. The city may impose a maximum 800 square foot limit. Is that for the junior accessory dwelling unit only or for both?
That is for this, the one.
The junior.
The junior.
Yeah, okay. Maybe if we could update, correct that, or clarify that on that cell. Going down to maximum size, 1,200 square foot, 1,200 square feet is no longer the limit for attached accessory dwelling units, just 50% of the main house. I think if the 1,200 square foot limit was for the senior accessory dwelling units, but that may not exist. That may not be the case anymore. But my understanding is you can have an accessory dwelling unit that's up to 800 square feet, and then you can have a regular accessory dwelling unit that's much larger.
Yes.
Okay. One item that is especially alarming, particularly for those in the half-acre or estate lot size areas, is that the required side and rear setbacks may not exceed 4 feet. Currently, our side yard setbacks in the E4 area, in other words, the half-acre lot sizes, the side yard setbacks are 10 feet. This would reduce it 6 feet down to 4 feet.
You would have less space between residences than you do currently between a current residence and its property line.
Yeah.
So in other words, instead of the 10 feet, you would have 4 feet and 4 feet if the neighbor were to do it. So
Right.
in essence, you could have properties extremely close together.
Yeah, in other words, if you look at the, let's say some of the houses in the newer communities like Irvine and so forth, where they have They have a minimum 5-foot setback from stucco to property line. So it's effectively 10 feet from stucco to stucco on adjacent homes. This could make it 8 feet.
Right.
And this could make it 8 feet in our E4, in our half-acre lot zones. Plus, the side yards, rear yard setbacks may also not exceed 4 feet. And currently, the rear yard setbacks, let's say in the E4 zone is it 25 feet?
I believe so.
Yeah, so you go from 25 feet down to 4 feet. So this could really significantly impact the character of our community, both in terms of density and also just the character of our housing. So, yeah, do consider this in 2020. That's the end of my comments.
I have one last question. What's the penalty if we don't comply?
Well, state law
I'll let you build.
preempts anything we do. So if somebody were to come in and we were to deny their project, if it was in compliance, they could file a writ of mandate and go to court and get their project approved. Even though more likely it wouldn't be an individual, it would be a housing organization or something of that ilk, which would probably be the tip of the spear on such litigation.
Yeah, this is all truly alarming for those of us that are long-term residents of Villa Park.
Indeed. Any further comments from the council? Anything from the audience? Seeing none, motion to receive and file.
So moved.
There's no need to take action, actually.
Okay.
Good, thank you. Next up, item 11. Our next new business item is the approval of the ballot drop box license agreement. Steve?
Yeah, you recall that we talked a little bit about the California Voters' Choice Act, which was signed by Governor Brown in 2016. The county is moving toward a new vote center model, and that is going to change radically the way we cast votes in Orange County. Specifically, there'll be vote centers that are open basically 10, 11 days in each community, and they will be, also there'll be drop boxes that people can come and drop their boxes. You do not required to go to certain ballot to polling places anymore. You can go anywhere to any of the places. If you go you say you live here but work in Irvine, you can go down in Irvine and vote at a voting center down there. So the Registrar of Voters has been working to identify specific locations for both the voting centers and for the ballot drop box. The voting centers is a much more onerous requirement that basically they require 11 days that you'll be available, probably 12 when you think about open setup, and that would have to have 24-hour access, 24-hour security, that would have to be open and in exclusive use and be available to them. So for instance, there's a minimum square footage requirement they're trying to get to because they have to set up their machines, et cetera. The location, the type of location is the conference, the chambers we're in right now, which is not realistic for us to shut down for 10 days, and we've sort of communicated that, and they recognize that. In lieu of that, they said, well, what about a drop box? And I said, that's probably a very reasonable type of thing that we could look for. And after Bill Tarrin and I looked around, one of the things we identified was right out in front where we have our sign, the screen, there's a setback there that we would be able to put. It's an ideal location because people could come, drive up, put in their, get out of the car, put their their ballot in, et cetera. This is a license agreement. The Registrar of Voters came out, looked at the site, evaluated it, determined that was appropriate. It's secure. It's they've got graffiti-proof type things in there, et cetera. A license agreement basically is an agreement with the county to allow them to place them. It would be bolted in, covered on the bolts are covered so they can't remove them, et cetera. The county has full responsibility for maintenance, cleanliness, et cetera, of taking care of it, and any extra requirements they would have. So this is basically an agreement for us to put it in there. This is not a one-time situation. This is an ongoing. The county has moved to this. whole system. So they are, any damage or any responsibility drilling, any of that kind of installation costs, they will repair. And in fact, because of the nature of some of the drilling, they might have to replace some of the cement that we've done out there. They would put it into our requirements. So anyway, from our perspective, the ballot drop box is sort of the reality we are in a new situation. This is a license agreement. Each city is required to have at least a drop box in their city. And given the availability of city property, we don't have a lot of options. So they've also they're looking with retail areas here to possibly do a voting center. That's a discussion that I'm not involved in because it is not, it's not city, we wouldn't be negotiating it. Anyway, this is something it is city property, it'd be right out here. And I believe that it would be acceptable. I think the package contains basically the diagram of where it would be, the consideration of the dimensions, and I believe it even has a picture of it in the very back. We have a representative from the Registrar of Voters here in the event that you have any specific questions, but would be my recommendation that we approve this. They need to finalize this all by the beginning of December. And I think the Registrar of Voters has indicated to me and to all the other clerks of the respective cities a somewhat onerous element of this law that allows the Registrar of Voters to basically come in and take space and occupy it, if you will, for the purposes of running the election. And that is something that he doesn't want to do, and he believes that we're working with him to try and get this. So this is something I believe that will satisfy the requirements of both the registrar and show good intention, well intent of the city, and it will not be too much of a burden, or if any, a burden on the city. And I think it's important because people here are used to coming in and voting here, as this is where we've used a polling place. So if they can come and at least drop their ballots here, I think it's a system that makes a lot of sense for at least to have a location, you've got a location identity here. So I think that's on people's mind. The registrar is planning a full-blown education process that you'll start seeing media blasts, et cetera, coming out. But with that, I would recommend approval of license agreement and allow us to execute and get that back to the Registrar of Voters.
Thank you. Any questions?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
It's actually for the Registrar of Voters. Did you say they were present?
Thank you for your patience this evening.
Council, thank you for having me. My name is Justin Berardino. I'm the operations manager for Registrar of Voters.
Hi, good evening.
good
I have a
evening.
question. So one of the things that I think the residents really enjoy is the foundation puts on like a candidates forum where all the candidates come up here and questions are asked, and it's a standing room only. And I understand item 17 says no electioneering. Is that just for that 11-day period, or
Electioneering would be during the 29-day period. So 29 days before the election, that's when the ballot boxes will be open. And it would be 100 feet from the drop box. So as long as that's happening outside the 100 feet, it should be okay.
Yeah, I think the 100. I think
It would
this-
be within the 100
It would
feet.
be
It would
within
be
the
within
100
So it
feet.
just has to
So,
be prior to the 29 days.
so we could still have the candidates forum, just it would have to be prior to the 29 days.
It would be after the filing period, but we would have to move it ahead of the 29 days of the election. So they could still do it in here. We just couldn't do it within the 29-day timeframe. Right?
Yeah, I mean, that would satisfy it for sure.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, if it's outside the 100 feet.
No, it's not.
No, it's not.
It's
It's
within. the
within.
100.
It's within.
It's
okay.
right outside the door here, candidly.
Unless your definition of electioneering is just nobody's actually saying, don't vote for him.
It's a candidates forum they're talking about.
But it's,
And-
it's question and answer.
Yeah, and if you want, I could take that back for legal review and find out if that satisfies
But I
the
think we
requirement
could
for
candidly
electioneering.
move it forward. I mean, there's probably no problem if we work forward with the groups, sponsoring groups, to make sure that
It happened before
it
that.
happened prior to. I don't think that presents any problem at all.
I'd like the
It's
question
just
answered,
a
though,
very
if you can
valuable
look
process.
into it.
Yeah, I can have a legal review done on that.
Thanks.
Thank you. Todd?
Yeah, for what it's worth, I mean, whatever the clerk says governs, but yeah, I've always taken the position that's not electioneering.
Okay.
Because you run into a whole bunch of issues using public property for election, public property. We have a candidates forum. A candidates forum is a public purpose. It's not an electioneering purpose. I know maybe that's a fine line, but I think we should be okay, but whatever your guy says.
Okay.
It's just a very, it's a useful tool for both the residents and the candidates, and it's something that I think everyone looks forward to.
Understood.
I did.
Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Steve, did we consider putting it back where the library box is?
I can probably give you a stack full of complaints about where the library box is.
We know that.
So we were trying not to create a further problem back
Well,
there.
the
with
only
traffic.
the only reason I asked, because when I read through this, it seemed like they had some specifics around parking and having parking available so you could access this
Yeah,
unit. And it calls for ADA and a whole bunch of other things. And, you know, these are public spaces out here that get used quite often for the restaurant and all of the businesses. And are we,
We had the registrar of voters out here. They came out here and evaluated did a full assessment. And we talked about the site back there, and they preferred the site up front because we have handicap parking closer than you do in the back.
True.
And also because I'm not a particular fan of where the post office and the mail, that is, because it creates people going the opposite direction of which they should be going to drop off mail or books.
Okay.
And it just sort of exacerbates that problem. Just a side note, Mike and Rich and I sometimes sit out back and watch cars during lunch just to see who's going to hit first. Because it's an accident waiting to happen there. So I'm not, I couldn't recommend that as a good place for a drop box.
Sir?
We don't actually own any of these parking spaces. These are owned by the adjacent
Right.
merchants, correct?
Right.
So has that been taken into consideration that we
Yeah,
don't
it's
own?
available, handicap with accessible. So it has to be reasonable space in close proximity. The issue here is this
says
this
non-exclusive.
parking lot has to have, the owners have to have parking handicap by law. So they
Understood.
can't get rid of the handicap parking.
But we're taking, basically what we're taking the property of the adjacent property owners for our purposes.
We are doing the same thing we do for the city council meeting tonight.
Yes.
That counts toward ADA for us, the accessibility. So that is not our handicap parking, but the city council chambers are accessible handicap because of that parking that is not ours technically.
Yes.
Yes, that's correct, but we're doing that right now, yes.
But I mean, in terms of establishing a voting box, it seems like you would have to have publicly owned parking adjacent to the.
No, they're actually running voting centers in private property.
Okay.
Yeah,
And it's-
that's correct.
it-
That hasn't been an
That's
issue.
not a requirement, does not have to be.
So it doesn't have to be at City Hall. It could be anywhere in the city of Orange or city of Villa Park.
It could be elsewhere in the city of Villa Park, but my personal opinion is this is where people, this is a polling place in the past.
Okay.
I think there's an identity here, and it probably makes sense from a civic perspective to be able to come to City Hall and vote. Seems like a logical assumption that I would sort of recommend to the council.
and it stipulates in here this non-exclusive use of parking spaces. So,
Any further questions? Members of the audience have any comments or questions about this item? Bringing it back to council. Any further discussion on this matter? Do I have a motion?
I'll move.
Do I have a second?
second?
I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
That passes by a 5-0 vote.
Our final new business item is the appointment of the city's designated representative to the Vector Control Board. Steve?
Yes, this is the current appointee to the Vector Control Board.
Yes, sir.
Orange County Mosquito and Vector Control Board is former Councilman Nelson. His term expires January 5th of 2020. The district has asked us that we contact them with an appointment, and it has to be decided by the city council. The person would take a 2-year or 2 or 4-year term, and that would be effective January 6th, 2020. So the mayor and I had a conversation, and he recommended that Councilwoman Miles be appointed for a 2-year term effective January 6th, 2020. So it's up to the council to take action.
I'll talk about this briefly. Councilwoman Miles stepped up in a very awkward situation, and she did the lion's share of the work. I did a little bit of the work in trying to keep our city up to speed and making reports on what the Vector Control Board was doing. And she has an extensive background in science. She has a desire to be a part of this board, and I can't recommend her highly enough. She's shown leadership, and I appreciate it, and I hope that we all give her a thumbs up on this.
Thank you. Thank you.
Any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the recommendation.
We'll go ahead and just put that out for any comment on this, public comment. Bring it back to council. No discussion, then you have a motion?
Can I actually,
Motion to approve.
sorry, real quick.
Sure.
Are you interested in a 4-year go at this instead of the 2,
Two-year.
or?
I think, let's start with 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I have a motion. Do I have a second on this?
Second.
I have a second. I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Am I allowed to vote?
Yes, you are.
You can vote no.
That would not be nice. It would not be
It
kind.
passes by a 5-0 vote.
Thank you very much.
Very welcome, you earned it.
Looking forward to it.
Item 13, now we will discuss the city manager report.
This is the monthly report from the city manager. The only item that I did not add on here that's happened since, the county is reviewing the library formula allocation, which basically determines the days and hours of operation and the hours of the funding distribution that goes for each branch. Like you say, there's good parts and bad parts of being a regional system. In other words, we have to live by that allocation formula. So I was able to talk to the other city managers and got myself appointed as a representative to that 5-member group. We will be, of city managers, we'll be reporting back to the the County Library Advisory Board in 2020, I believe, is our charter, to come back and do that. So my goal would be to recommend that we preserve the city's days of operation and hours of operation, and there's a lot of intricacies I'll be happy to talk about. I'm near and dear to this one because the original agreement was something I negotiated when it was on the county, so I actually understand this one pretty well. I'd like to be able to ensure that cities like Villa Park get treated fairly and continual. So I just wanted to mention that because that will take a teeny bit of time, not much, but something that's not on here. That's all I have. I'm answering any other questions.
Any questions? Comments? Seeing none, move on to item 14. Mayor and council member matters. Now we will discuss the council member requested item regarding Rule 20A, funding underground utilities.
Item Rule 20A, funding, this is something that Councilman Zimmerman brought up at the last meeting, the League of Cities brought up in October. Rule 20A is basically, for those of you who are not familiar, is a means by which undergrounding is funded through Edison or PGE or whatever the provider is for that utility area. Basically, it's a way for the utilities to, they collect the money or credits, if you will. You submit projects and they basically provide you the money for that project that's credited toward you after you've developed a certain number of credits based on the amount of service population you have. It was intended to create a situation so that you wouldn't have to finance undergrounding. Undergrounding is extremely expensive. So it's a way for the utilities to help move forward on that. Now, the city in 2011 basically committed, did the Santiago stretch here by Town Center. We committed all of our funds, about 423,000. So we basically have service credits that we're still paying another 80 or 90,000 on because we had to borrow credits from other cities to help that project get done. So the Rule 28 is sort of woefully inadequate. So 13 cities got together with the League of Cities, Rancho Palos Verdes Estates, et cetera. One of the things they did is they want to increase funding of Rule 20A. Secondarily, they want to include projects that are in high fire hazard areas in that potential funding for underground, so that would provide opportunities to get that done. So there is a resolution that the League of Cities considered in October, I guess it did not get passed at the time. It went back to committee and it will be assessed by two committees. I'm not sure which on top of my head, which they are, but it'll come back in January or February to be reconsidered. The League of Cities sort of is interested in those that might have interest in weighing in. So Councilman Zimmerman and Mayor Rossini asked that it be put on so that we could express support, and I'll leave the rest to you.
Yeah, I'm not going to delve too deep into this. This is not something where the residents are going to have to underground utilities in Villa Park. Let me make sure that that's put out there first and foremost. What this is an effort for our city council to try to encourage others in this day and age where we've got utilities that have been proven to have made some very, very large mistakes. Tremendous amount of good people work for these organizations and spent their life doing good things and doing things the right way, but they haven't invested in infrastructure. They only recently started updating their emergency preparedness plans and failed woefully, in my opinion, in trying to help cities and communities to underground utility lines and update their technology, and that has resulted in massive losses and fires, loss of life, loss of property. Well, this Rule 20A is probably a drop in a swimming pool, but it's a start, and I think it's an intelligent piece of work by the League of Cities, and I think a lot of cities are interested in doing this of similar size and nature, and I hope we can get behind it and try to encourage our utilities to put forth a little more money so that one day when our debt is paid off, we can start putting aside a nest egg to improve our infrastructure around our city, wherever that council sees fit. It won't be this council or even the next one, that's for sure. So that's my concern, I think, and I want to thank Councilman Zimmerman for bringing that to our attention.
Originally, they had designated these funds for specific areas, and this addition to the rule opens that up to a couple of other areas that happen to impact Villa Park in small ways, but allowing for the safety concern on top of just that aesthetic concerns, and may provide us a little bit more money down the line, possibly. Nothing set in stone. I've been following this as well, looking, I think January is right when they're looking at the next committee meeting on this and when they'll try to move forward on it again, on the off chance that it helps Villa Park in a small way.
Questions?
Steve, does Villa Park within Villa Park have any high fire designated areas?
Yes, we do.
Might fall under this that we could benefit from?
Yes, we do. I think there's two prongs. Yes, on the high fire, but also this resolution is calling for the expansion of Rule 28 in general as well. So the Rule 28 expansion plus the focus as well, including projects that otherwise might have just been excluded, would be included. So the high fire areas, yes, there are some sections in our city that would fall in here.
It's a couple at the top of Valley and along Cerro Villa,
Bless you.
Fair Villa, yeah.
right?
Ceravilla, yeah.
Okay.
They're on the border with
So
Orange.
in answer to your question, yes, there are areas, so we would get potentially additional consideration.
Okay. But we have to pay off our debt first.
Yes, sir. That's the first.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions, comments, concerns from council? Members of the audience? All right, seeing none. Bringing it back to council, any discussion? Okay. Do I have a motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation.
Do I have a second?
Sure, I second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
Passes by a 5-0 vote.
Next up, item 15. Now it is time to hear individual council information items, starting with Councilwoman Miles.
Thank you. First, I want to say thank you very much for the appointment. I'm looking forward to actually attending a vector control meeting instead of combing through the 189 pages of minutes. But I did want to thank former Councilman Nelson. I know that he attended and will up until January, but I want to thank him for his time and service. And he had a very good attendance record. Hopefully I'll have as well, if not better. He had 89%, something like that. So I'm going to
did.
shoot for 90. Just kidding. Anyways, just want to say thank you guys. I appreciate the appointment. So the flu clinic that we had, we actually closed a little bit early. It was great to see all our residents come. Want to thank the county health and the nurses that came, volunteered their time, and it was a success. Hopefully nobody's sick. Looking forward to a lot going on in December, both the Santa Tour as well as Winter Wonderland. And we have 4 groups that are going to be having booths at Winter Wonderland. We have Villa Park High School will be selling ornaments that specifically say VP. I don't know if they've designed them and had them made or what, but Villa Park High School, the PFSOs, will have booths selling the VP ornaments. CV, led by Nicole Jones, she'll be having a booth where children can make ornaments. And then Serrano Girl Scouts will be doing cookie decorating, and the 6th grade Serrano group will be selling hot chocolate. So I'm really looking forward to the participation. And I think each one of those PFSOs are going to have different groups that are going to be helping volunteer-wise. That's after the Santa Tour, so Santa's going to come in and take a little break, and then he's going to come and we'll have an area set up for pictures, so you can get that picture with Santa if you weren't able to catch him on the street. And then I'm looking forward to the 15th with the boat parade. I know tomorrow's a high travel day along with the storm. I hope everyone is safely arrives or gets their guests safely, and I wish everyone a wonderful Thanksgiving. And we'll be back at it in December. That's it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem.
A couple things. The Halloween Fest was fantastic. I mean, we had more people this year than I think we've seen in many, many years. And I really have to shout out to Shameen and her team for everything they did. Also, our new activities director was out there with his big hat on, and he was directing all the volunteers and stuff. I think he had like 70 volunteers, Forrest did, working for him at the event. But it was phenomenal. It was great to see all the kids. Thanks to our judges. My wife was one of the judges for the costume contest and all the others that participated. But it was a great event, and I really want to thank her and her team for doing a phenomenal job. I mean, she's got so much amazing enthusiasm, and she puts her heart and soul and her husband's heart and soul into that event. So
She does.
thank you all very much. Looking forward to the Marine Thanksgiving. Another shout out to Robert Frackleton and all the work that he does to bring off that event. That too is amazing for what we as a community do for those young men. My wife and I have participated in that many, many times. We haven't recently, but I tell you what, it does your heart well to know that those kids have a place to go on Thanksgiving and can celebrate, the event with families because they're not able to be at home with their own families. So, Robert, amazing job. Thank you so much for that. The Villa Park Women's League Holiday Party is open to everyone. There are 2 different ticket prices, one for members and one for non-members, but it's a wonderful event. It'll be held December 6th at the Assistance League Orange Chapter House in the plaza over in Orange. So we like to see as many people from Villa Park come as we can. There's signs out on Santiago with the information, and also you can go to villaparkwomensleague.org for information on the tickets. So looking forward to that event as well. And the boat parade and the Santa Tour. So fun times.
Absolutely. Councilman Zimmerman.
Great. So I'm going to echo or add a little bit to a couple of the items that were mentioned. So first of all, Halloween Fest was fantastic. This year was better than I've seen it in previous years, and I think it just keeps getting better and better. One of the things about having a recurring event like that is that it builds up some groundswell within the community, and we end up with a very successful community event. And it's a pleasure to see fellow council members there. We were out front giving away candy right here at City Hall, and just getting to see all the cool costumes that were out there in our community, and really feel like it was a part of Villa Park that we will grow each year, and was very successful. On November 21st, right? And also previously with it was a November 21st or October 21st, apologize. The Orange Unified School District Financial Master Plan Committee met, and I participated with the Orange County School District, or the Orange Unified School District on that. It was really exciting to see such a large group of people in our community take part in thinking about how Orange Unified is going to handle their fiscal responsibility to upgrade buildings, to enhance, to look forward to what the schools can do. The consulting group that we're working with commented that the group that's going to Orange Unified that's participating in this master plan rework is larger than any group that they've worked with. That includes local community members here in Villa Park and teachers, as well as others around Orange and around the Orange Unified District area. A tremendous number of people that are just trying to get involved, to participate, to make sure that the needs of the students are taken care of, the needs of the community are taken care of. I'm interested in all of those. So it was enjoyable to participate in, and we'll continue. I think we have 2 more meetings coming up, and then we work on the strategic plan that we release. So that's been a useful and productive group. I wanted to highlight the Friends of the Villa Park Library I mentioned earlier. They do, I mentioned this last month, and I think I forgot earlier when I was saying it. They have their fundraiser February 8th at the Phoenix Club. So if you're interested in participating in that, please do so. If you're not interested, then you should look into it and get interested. So the Villa Park Marines Thanksgiving is a fantastic program. It's going to be 138 Marines this year that the community of Villa Park welcomes into their homes. And there aren't very many other places that go out and do something like this, especially on that scale. In addition to the logistics and planning to get all of those families together, Evan and David Frackleton and Robert Frackleton have really been involved in putting together gift baskets for each of the Marines. They put together a challenge coin that has the Villa Park and Rotary seal on it, as well as a Leatherman toolkit and some other items. They really do a great job of making that into a event that honors our Marines and welcomes them into and makes the Villa Park community a part of Thanksgiving. These kids, the Marines have just finished basic training. They have this gap before they're deployed. They're about to be deployed in December, and this time when they can't necessarily go home to their families, but then get to become a part of Villa Park families is really special to them. And we've been doing this program for, I believe this is the 16th year. And there are families that have met Marines that then continue to welcome them back into their home or to stay in communication with them years afterwards, because this time is just it's a really special event. And it, something that I think that we need to highlight, and if there are other families in Villa Park that are interested in getting involved, not just this year, but in future years, it's something that will continue and is a really important and well-done event. I also am looking forward to the Winterfest and the Santa Tour. Those all sound fantastic, and I really hope everybody in the community gets involved. I think really having these things that we get to do as a community and that bring us all together, they create that sense of belonging, and they may combat some of the things that we have where we don't have the developers coming in and trying to maximize our land, but we get the families that stay in our community and stay in their family home and pass that along, and it creates that sense of community aside from whatever happens legally out there. So I encourage all of those community events.
Thank you.
I have nothing to report, but I would like to say I look forward to seeing everybody in the community at the boat parade and at the Santa Tour next month. Always fun events, and I know I've always enjoyed it in all the time I've lived here in Villa Park.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to start off by just acknowledging the fact that I went to two meetings that I wasn't able to report on. One on both on the 14th. One was the city selection committee on behalf of our city, where representatives throughout the county were selected to be a part of boards or committees, and this is put on by the county. Mayors or their designees selected other members of our county at large to serve, and I would like to say that personally I think Villa Park was very successful in getting some quality people appointed to boards. We had friends in Orange and Yorba Linda that were appointed, and also on the 14th I attended an ACCOC board meeting. A number of items were covered, including the approval of prior minutes and a proposed calendar, annual dues, authorization to expend resources allocated in their budget, and election of board of directors. I appreciate the opportunity to attend those meetings, but with respect to Villa Park itself, going to echo the sentiments of my colleagues. Look forward to seeing everybody at on the Santa Tour, at the Winter Wonderland, and obviously on the Dryland Boat Parade. Want to send a personal Thanksgiving out to everybody. Be safe, be kind to one another. If you see something, say something. Remember, a few years back, we had some unfortunate things going on in our city around this time of year. So remember, if you see something that's odd, call 911. Let us know. Let the city know. Let law enforcement know. Be careful with your fires. And be nice. Yes, indeed. And be kind to one another. Thank you to our Marines. I will be there for that event, and God bless you all. That's it. We're adjourned.
Thank you.